Yep, because we're muted. Okay, now you can hear us. We were just apologising for being a bit late. Live stream now. Funny enough, we're not showing up on Mixer. Oh wait, yes we are. There's Mixer. Oh, let's clear the Mixer chat. There we go. Yes, okay, they should be able to hear us now and see us and all that good stuff. Well, I've lost. Did I really just? Oh God! Close the Mixer chat because, of course, I did. Come on, there we go. Close the Mixer chat. So, voice recorder. Well, I'm ready to go when you are.
Okay. I am now recording.
I am now recording.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 139 for June 28th, 2019. Hey everyone, Dan Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. This week we'll be talking about all sorts of cool things. So, we probably talk about Microsoft and Windows. So we talk about Excalibur, whatever that is. No, not the sword. It's a new device, evidently a Surface device, which would be kind of interesting. More Centaurus info, including Andromeda rumors, almost said ruins, OneDrive news. Plus, there's Zach, you didn't update all this. We're going to talk about Cortana in the store and a couple other little bits.
That's in there for me. Oh wait, I know why it's not showing up because I didn't press enter.
There you
it
go.
Should be there now.
Look at that! Instantly shows up. We're using Microsoft To Do for this, and it's working beautifully. And Cortana in the store, which follows up something we've been talking about for a while now. That's been happening with Microsoft and Windows. Let's get to it. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm very good. Also, I just want to correct you just there. You mentioned we might be talking about Andromeda rumors. That's not correct. We're talking about Android rumors, not Andromeda rumors.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't sleep well last night. For some reason, my brain didn't completely shut off, and and I getting distracted by 9,000 things.
I just don't want to pick people to get excited. Like, Andromeda rumors? Is it back? No, we're not talking about Andromeda today.
Yeah, sorry. There's no Andromeda. That's the rumor. Anyway, let's get to it. Let's talk about Excalibur. I'll let you take this since it's your scoop anyway.
Yeah. So Excalibur is a code name I've been hearing for quite a while now, and for a long time I wasn't exactly sure what it was. And over time, this is usually how it works. You ping people here and there, you just hear things and stuff. And I had figured out by the time that I started speaking to other Microsoft journalists about it that Excalibur was a Snapdragon 8CX device of some kind. Now, I didn't know the form factor. I didn't know if it was going to be the Centaurus device. I didn't know any of that. Very quickly became obvious that it wasn't the Centaurus device because Centaurus is an Intel-based device. More on that later. So Excalibur, according to Brad Sams, who wrote a report this week, is a Surface Pro 7 device. And according to him, Microsoft is testing a bunch of different CPUs for its product lineup this year. So the Surface Pro line will have both an ARM and Intel option. So you'll have, I assume at the entry level, maybe slightly above the entry level, will be this ARM device. And then you'll also have an Intel Core i5 and an Intel Core i7 option for you to choose from as well. And this will be just like going to the Microsoft Store and choosing an i5 or an i7 today. So it'll be an option for you to pick. And I assume it'll be the LTE option. So when you want to buy a Surface Pro 7 with LTE, you'll be buying the Snapdragon 8CX version, aka Excalibur. If you don't want LTE, then you'll be getting an Intel Core i5 or an Intel Core i7. That's, I'm assuming, how it will work. Pretty cool. Otherwise, the Surface Pro 7, we've actually mentioned this on the podcast a few times. Surface Pro 7, pretty much exactly the same on the outside. The only difference is the Surface Connect port is gone and USB Type-C is in. Now, Brad says that this won't be Thunderbolt 3 enabled, which is quite a surprise. In fact, that's...
Well,
terrible.
It would make sense because you can't get Thunderbolt 3 on ARM.
Sure, but what about the Intel options?
Yeah, but then you cause and I gotta sneeze.
Bless you. Wow, look at that.
The allergies. Yeah, I think they don't want they want to minimize distinctions between the SKUs as much as possible.
That makes sense.
And explaining to customers why one has Thunderbolt 3 and one does not, I think would be a challenge. On top of the fact, there's already this issue of how do you explain ARM versus Intel? I guess they feel like at this point that the distinction between those is going to be so minimal that most people won't notice, especially with Electron. By that point, will be native ARM, and Unity will be native ARM, and who knows what will happen between now and then in terms of progress for ARM. But yeah, I think the Thunderbolt 3 thing, that's going to be Thunderbolt 3 is going to be and you'll talk about this too when this idea that the Surface line is diversifying away from Intel, but Thunderbolt 3 is an Intel technology. I don't know if people realize that. So even if you go to AMD, there's still this question of how you get Thunderbolt 3. That's going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah, so do AMD and I guess ARM have alternatives to Thunderbolt 3?
Nope.
No, so Thunderbolt 3 is the only tech. Okay, interesting. So
they would have to rely on USB 4, which as far as I know is not really a thing yet. So.
Yeah, so I assume is that in the works at least, or is that just
I assume
conceptual?
So, yeah.
Okay, well that's that on the Thunderbolt 3 front. So if you were hoping for external GPUs on the next Surface Pro, unfortunately you won't be getting that. Regarding the Surface Book 3 and Surface Laptop 3, not really much is known. I assume the designs will be basically the same, except with USB Type-C instead of Surface Connect. Usually the latest Intel processors that are available at the time. So what will that be? Lakefield?
Yeah, Lakefield or Ice Lake.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
But with the Surface Laptop, they are supposedly going to be releasing AMD variants instead. So dropping Intel from the Surface Laptop line and just going with AMD, which is interesting.
So I like this idea in the sense of Microsoft's all about its partners and ecosystems. And it's clear AMD has made a lot of progress this year. And same thing with Qualcomm. Mm-hmm. And as Microsoft probably doesn't want to be picking favorites, right? They try to spread it around. They help their partners in terms of design. This goes back to HP, where they helped, the first Spectre X360 blew me away in 2015. I was like, whoa, this is HP? And it was because they worked with Microsoft. And since then, HP's taken that and run with it, right? They're just doing some really amazing laptops. And so they try to spread it around. So I think when the opportunity, but that doesn't mean they want to AMD has a terrible processor, but we got to do them a solid because they're AMD. Then that's not the Surface team, right? The Surface team believes in whatever hardware they're going to sell. But I mentioned a few podcasts ago, I asked Lenovo about this, like why using AMD now in some of your laptops, and they said because they're good enough now. They're like the first gen ones for the mobile processors weren't awesome. They didn't meet expectations. This new gen though does. In fact, they sometimes outperform Intel. Where they don't necessarily outperform is battery life. That may be changing down the road, but they are also cheaper. And so there's two ways. If a company saves money on a processor, they could just save that money, get higher profits per device, or they could take that. It's about $50 savings from what I understand. It's not a ton, but they could take that $50 and sink it back into the device to do something else that's cool with it, right? Higher premium quality materials, go for a better, Wi-Fi, or do something with the display, right? So that's probably what's happening here. But it looks like that the Microsoft team wants to diversify just to support its partners and ecosystems and get everybody a slice of this. So in that sense, I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what it's like.
Yeah, a few people are saying in the chat, wasn't there rumors that this year's Surface Pro would be a completely new design? So yes, there are rumors that there is a redesigned Surface Pro in the works. It is codenamed Carmel, but that is not coming this year. It was supposed to come last year, and it didn't. Then it was supposed to come this year, and it also hasn't. And now the rumor is next year. I don't know why it keeps being pushed back. Honestly, I have no idea. But I'm not expecting... It's not going to be like a huge shift in form factor. It will still be a Surface Pro. It'll have thinner bezels, a slightly thinner design, all the usual sort of stuff. It'll be a change up from what the Surface Pro line has been since the Surface Pro 4, more or less. The Surface Pro 4 has been basically... That's been it, right?
Maybe I'm thinking... Maybe there'll be a new Qualcomm chip out that's even faster than 8CX or more performant.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be another.
And then
if they
Pro
do an
line
ARM,
Pro line just switches all to ARM.
Oh, wow, that would be quite big. Well, you reckon that soon, next year? That would be.
I mean, we're saying next year, but I mean, I don't expect if they announce Surface Pro 7 in October, I don't think we'll see another new Surface until at least October 2020. Sure. In which case, yeah, there could be something else down the line. I mean, somebody tells me Qualcomm wasn't like 8CX. All right, we're done.
No, yeah.
We're off for 2 years. Everybody go on vacation. They had to be working. I mean, there's the rumor, right, that there's a 7CX2 coming.
Right, I do want to mention that
Yeah,
because
so
a lot of people have been saying online, well, why aren't they doing this for the Surface Go? Why isn't the next Surface Go the 8CX device? And I think the reason is because the next Surface Go will be a 7CX device, because the 8CX is actually quite powerful. It's an Intel Core i5 level of power, and it's not super cheap. It's
yeah, we don't know the pricing on it, but it's not a replacement for a Snapdragon 850.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a premium tier, so it's going to be more expensive than whatever that is.
And the Surface Go is $399 starting, so they will need a cheaper processor in there. And the 7CX is rumored to be a Windows 10 sort of class ARM processor that's shipping in devices that ranges between $300 and $800. The Surface Go fits right in there at $399, so I'm assuming the next Surface Go will be a 7CX device, and I'm not expecting that this year. That will be 2020. But yeah, so that's why they're not doing 8CX in the Surface Go. It makes more sense for the Surface Pro to have the 8CX because it is more powerful. And I think it's a bolder statement. It's easy for Microsoft to put an ARM chip in the Surface Go and say, oh, that's our safe sort of, that's the Surface Go, don't worry about it. But with Surface Pro, which is their flagship Surface, this is the Surface that most people have, for them to go put ARM in it, tells people that they mean business when it comes to Windows 10 on ARM. It's like, hey guys, we're for real here. We are doing Windows 10 on ARM. Here is Surface Pro with it.
Yeah, because up till now, it's been up to their partners. And to be fair, it's not like when I talk to HP and Lenovo about ARM, they're not like, they know when they're putting these devices out there that these are going to be low inventory, sort of low selling devices, but they're meant to get out there in the market, to get into enterprise and business hands as possible options, but also to get feedback, to hear what people, when I met with Lenovo recently, they asked me, because they know I'm into the ARM stuff. They're like, hey, how's your experience with ARM going? Like, what are your limitations with it? They're literally looking for pain points. So you consider the ARM up till now a soft launch, right? They're not, you don't see the commercials. And that's the smart, safe way to do it, right? And I get some people are going to be like, oh, this Windows 10 ARM's not doing well. No one's talking about it. But that's not the way it's going. And I mentioned this on the last podcast, because it's not just about the hardware and what you can do on it now today. It's about the entire ecosystem. So things like I mentioned earlier, Unity and Electron going native ARM is huge. I also mentioned, and I saw the official compiled version of Edge for ARM, which you can get now to, not directly. You can find it on the internet, basically. But we know that's coming probably in the fall, which, again, lines up with this release. But all this other stuff needs to happen for ARM to be pushed commercially and publicly in such a large way. And something tells me if these rumors are accurate about this fall, this happening, then there's going to be a lot more stuff happening around ARM where the distinctions between, and I've seen the 8CX run native and emulated Win32 apps. And I'm telling you, like, the distinction really gets blurred with the 8CX at this point. Like, it's going to be real interesting to see how it's received and how the reviews come out for it. But I could see a lot of people are excited about it. And I think, because we all want, you said it before, right? Just take an iPad hardware, put Windows Core OS on it, call it a day, right? Mm-hmm. We all want that experience of instant on, long battery life, always connected, thin, no fan. And they're getting there. But this may be a real big push towards that. So I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, so actually on the subject of Windows Core OS, the next Surface Book, Surface Laptop, and Surface Pro won't be Windows Core OS devices. Obviously, they'll be full Windows 10 home devices, I assume. So there are rumors that Centaurus may be talked about in October alongside those three devices, in which case that will be a Windows Core OS device in the form of Windows Lite. And if they are announcing Centaurus in October, they should probably also announce Windows Lite alongside it, because I can't imagine even Microsoft announcing a foldable device that runs an operating system that hasn't been announced yet. At that point, they will have to come clean and be like, all right, guys, here's what we're doing.
Yeah, I could totally see this going down as, in October to get on stage, Surface Laptop, Surface Book 3, Surface Pro, and then they're going to throw out the, ARM LTE version. And then they're going to be like, one more thing. We want to give you guys a quick look at a new experience
Yeah.
that we're working on. And they show the hardware. They probably won't talk much about the OS directly. Like this is a new version, we're calling it Windows, but you're going to infer that something else is going on because you're going to see an OS that handles two displays, and it's going to be much more what we've seen in the Courier concepts of a device built around touch and inking, dual screens, swapping between those screens, new experiences for, like, because the big question people are going to have, right? Everybody that's listening to this right now is like, why would I want that device? And I've been saying for a long time, it's not really up for Zach and me to justify why Microsoft should have a dual screen foldable PC, right? It's up to Microsoft to get on stage and tell us that. And that's what you're going to see like in a sizzler reel. You're going to see these experiences that you can't do on a current PC or any kind of device today in that device, and then it'll click. And that's the way all this stuff should work. You shouldn't have to have like Panos on stage for 20 minutes going like, well, you could use it for this, and maybe if you want to do like, it should be one of those, you watch the sizzle reel and you see stuff that's like, wow, we've never been able to do that on a device. That would be cool. And that's the challenge that they've been having to do, and why this didn't come out 2 years ago or 8 years ago with Courier, right? Like you need to build this thing up so that it actually makes sense. It can't just be, we made a dual screen device. Because if you just did a dual screen Windows 10 device, it's like, okay, I mean, that's cool. I mean, I'm not saying that's worthless, but it's not as impactful as what we're possibly expecting as transformative.
Yeah, I can see the October event going either of two ways. Either they announce CentOS and Windows Lite like fully fledged, like, hey, this is the device, here's the operating system, is coming early next year, or they just do a tease at the end, like you mentioned. They just sort of hint at it like a Project Scarlet, Project Scorpio type tease that, hey, we're dual screens are the future, blah blah, a whole new Windows experience, stuff like that. That's probably how it's got. If they don't do anything in October, then that's going to be very interesting, because I know OEMs want to start talking about their new foldables, and and they can't yet, not really, unless they announce it without the operating system, which makes it difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point here. I think because we saw the ThinkPad X1 foldable display device, like Lenovo basically had to have gotten permission from Microsoft to talk about that in guidance, right? I think because they did that, it's like a green light, like, yep, we're going forward with this now. Let's start talking about this. Same with Intel, right? Intel at Computex was able to show off its two dual screen device. Like that's not a coincidence, right? And then of course, was it Acer or Asus, the Duo? I'm always going to mix those two up. Their Duo Pro concept device.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up, Siri.
Someone's shouting at you. Yeah. I mean, even like they did that hands-on internally recently, where they showed off the Taurus itself to employees.
Right.
I mean, if they're thinking of doing that, then I feel like an announcement for it has to be, it has to be within this year, right? There's no way it's going to be 2020 now. They will have to. I think they have to talk about it in October. Of course, they can delay if they need to. If the thing's not ready, if the operating system isn't ready to go, or if the hardware isn't working properly, then of course they won't announce it. But I think the plan is to announce it later this year. And finally, right, it's been a long time coming. Windows Core OS and all of these cool ideas that I've been writing about since 2017. I'm actually quite excited for it. So the last thing I want to briefly mention about this October event is there is also a pair of earbuds, I believe we've talked about these before, that are rumoured to be announced there as well. They're codenamed Morrison. They are just like Apple's AirPods, except they may not have like the little long bit. I don't actually know what they look like.
They have dials on them, 4 cords on them.
Yeah, but they're not going to be like super big ones like the Surface headphones are, because don't get me wrong, I love the Surface.
No, they
headphones.
are. They're just giant earbuds.
Cover the whole, yeah. No, don't get me wrong, I love the Surface headphones, but they are huge. I would much prefer like smaller earbuds just for going out for a day and stuff, instead of taking them with me like on a hot summer's day, because man, it's hot in the UK right now and you cannot take those Surface headphones outside. It would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm still hoping for it. I'm not expecting this in October, so I don't want to set up any expectations there. I still really want to see Panos and his team, their take on a wearable.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Like, that's what I'm still kind of waiting for. And, again, you mentioned about how long we've been talking about dual screen and foldables and Windows Core OS. But to be fair, like, it's because, it goes back to that, when you guys release stuff, when it's ready. And they could have done a foldable device with just Windows 10 like 2 years ago. Like all this stuff could come out earlier, but you got to wait for things. Like, for instance, Intel's 10 nanometer chipset, like that wasn't available 6 months ago. It's still technically not available right now, but it's about to come out, right? Like 10 nanometer opens up so much opportunities for hardware manufacturers, because I've seen the motherboards for these things, and it's so small with a motherboard. Like the Dell XPS 13 2-in-1, which should be out sometime this summer. I've seen the motherboard. We have pictures of it too. Like the motherboard, sorry if you're listening to the audio version, but it's like about this big, right? It's so small. To think of a computer laptop's motherboard being that tiny now is just like, and so you can do things now. You make your device thinner, or you can add more battery. And so all these things come together. Like, what good is a foldable device if it doesn't have LTE, for instance? Or what good is a foldable device if it's going to cost $3,000? Or what good is it if the battery lasts you 3 hours and 4 hours, or needs fans, right? Like, we're at the point now, we're kind of accepting the fact you can get like Intel Core i5 devices that are fanless. But that wasn't a thing a couple of years ago. That was really hard to do. You had to rely on Y series processors, which themselves have gotten better. So or even display technology. Like, look at what's the big story this year. Everybody's doing 15-inch 4K OLEDs. Like, why? Did he just all decided? No, it's because Samsung was able to make 4K OLED panels of 15-inch, mass produce them at a cost level that these companies could offer it as an option. So to make these devices and experiences happen, it's not just about getting it out right now. It's about trying to ensure that experience is actually good and not just a gimmick, right? Because they never want to be accused of like, this is a gimmick. And I think, and that's the tough part in our job, is that sometimes we want this stuff really early. Even like I'm just said a wearable. I totally do want a wearable. But battery life is still an issue. And then there's also the whole like the reason for it, right? Is it just a watch? Is it a fitness thing? Is it a health thing? Is it just to show you notifications? Like, there still needs to be a different angle for the Surface team to attack that and go like, here's how we can do this and make it better. And that's not necessarily a clear, path right now. I'm not sure what that answer is. All I know is I'm upset because I'm using the Apple Watch. It's fine. The Apple Watch is great. It's the iPhone that sucks. So, that ticks me off. So I would kill to have the Apple Watch work with Android. It doesn't, never will. So I could go get an Android Wear device.
They all suck.
They all suck, right? So like I keep like going down the reviews of them. The best one to pair right now is Fossil, which sounds interesting. But people are like, battery life's not very good, or the processor itself is just not very good on these. So it's something with like, there's just no clear answer for that right now. And you have Fitbits, which I have on my other wrist, but a Fitbit is very specific to fitness, which is cool, but it's not really what we're talking about here. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It is going to be an interesting October, I think. So devices we're not expecting. We're not expecting a new Surface Studio. That would be way too soon, I think, for those who just bought a Studio 2. Is there anything else in the Surface line? I don't think so. I think the Surface Studio is the only thing we're not expecting this year. That, and of course, a new Surface Pro redesign. And possibly Centaurus. Like I said, it's 50-50 whether it would be there in October or not. But other than that, sounds like a pretty exciting event. I mean, the three main product lines are supposed to get updates in October, so that should be more than fine. Again, they're not design updates, though. They're just going to be the same. I don't know. How long can we go with the same designs before people start getting a bit antsy?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So for me, the Surface Pro, like I have it right here in front of me. In fact, I've got my chart. I gotta be careful because it's black. I don't want to scratch it. I mean, can you make this device better? There's always the obvious things. The bezels, make the bezels thinner. But I don't consider making bezels thinner transformative. To me, that's just part of.
No, I don't think so either.
And they've done that since Surface Pro 3. They've made the bezels thinner and put a bigger screen in there and stuff like that. Like, I'm not. The Surface Pro 7, if it's just a refresh, I wouldn't be surprised if they did do that, right? I also heard it's going to have more rounded corners, more like Surface Go. But that's not what we're talking about, like a redesign. I don't consider that redesign. I consider that to be like, we're modifying it, right? But I don't know how you improve Surface Pro. Like, why would you? Like, what do you mean redesign it? Like the kickstand? What's wrong with the kickstand? They can make the kickstand better. That's not a redesign, though. They can make the bezels thinner. Again, that's not. I think the core experience of it, though, is really good. Like, I don't know what it would even mean if people are expecting a radical redesign. And whatever they did do anyway, they'd be divisive. I think it's better to go like just keep improving the Surface Pro line, make it thinner, change up the ports, make the bezels a little bit thinner, and do something with the display. But save all the real crazy innovation for your newer lines of devices, whether it's a foldable one or it's a Windows on ARM one or a Surface. Like, I feel like they can do experiments there with those devices and not screw up the Pro. Because the Pro is kind of iconic, and I really like it. Like, I don't see why, like, what radically needs to change on this device. So
it needs to be more lappable.
More lappable, yeah.
That's the
I still
innovation.
wouldn't mind. I still wouldn't mind to see it in burgundy, do the Surface laptop stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Different color wears. Wow.
Anyway, let's move on to our next topic of the day, Centaurus. So it actually technically sort of follows on from the thing we just talked about. So Centaurus, it was in the news this week once again, as a report from Forbes was published that sort of detailed it, sort of rounded off a few things we already knew, and sort of added a few extra details on top of that. So, for example, Forbes is hearing that it has 9-inch screens. Up until now, I didn't actually know the screen size. I just knew it had dual screens. They also confirmed that it is an Intel device. They say Intel Lakefield. I have been hearing since December that it is an Intel device, so that's also confirmed. They also mention Android apps. Now, this is something that we've talked about on the podcast, at least hinted at a couple of times. And it's something I was hearing regarding Windows Core OS, and more specifically Andromeda. At the time, back last year, when I was talking to people about Andromeda, people were saying, yeah, Microsoft is looking at different ways of sort of closing the app gap. They've got PWAs on one side, they have the hope that developers will be UWPs on the other. Then there's also the idea of Android apps. Now, this is an interesting subject because this isn't something I've ever been seeing confirmed by people. I've seen people talk about documents and whatnot and ideas and what people have been saying internally, how this is something some people at Microsoft want to do. But I've also heard different methods of how people want to do it. So a few people who I've been speaking to have heard via sort of a Project Astoria type method, which it would be Microsoft's own native emulation, and the apps would be in the Microsoft Store. And, you'd download them and they'd run in like a window and you could resize it and stuff. That one, I think, makes the most sense, especially if Microsoft is trying to pick up its own app store ecosystem, right? If they want apps in the Microsoft Store, it makes sense to add Android apps in there because then that fills it up with a lot more apps. And if the apps run well on Windows, then what's the problem, right? If they speak to Windows APIs and they operate like a normal app, then I don't see the problem with Android apps running on Windows or Windows Core OS. The other method, which is somewhat more divisive when it comes to people internally, is running via third-party emulators. Now, this one's one I learned about quite recently, and honestly, I don't think it makes any sense, but I'm going to say it anyway. So this is what Microsoft might be planning for Android emulation on Centaurus and Windows Core OS, is allowing third-party emulators like BlueStacks. And I'm not saying this is specific to BlueStacks. BlueStacks is just the most well-known example, but there are other Android emulators out there where they could build to an API that allows them to integrate with things like the Windows Shell and the Windows experience. So BlueStacks could build a version of its client or whatever that taps into the Windows Shell, like, say, Steam, for example. So Steam is a third-party store that you download from the web, but the games and the content you download through Steam end up in the start menu, and you can pin icons to the desktop, and you'd be able to do the same via BlueStacks. You'd be able to pin those Android apps to the desktop or the taskbar. You'd see them in the start menu. When you click on them, they just run and spin up a VM or however it works for BlueStacks, and then you'd be in your app. I'm not a fan of this method. I hope they don't go this way, but this is one of the ways they're looking into doing this. This could be in addition to Microsoft's own method. I don't know, because this falls into Microsoft's open store idea that they announced with HoloLens 2. I believe Windows Core OS will be an open store platform through and through, so Microsoft will be welcoming third-party stores into the Microsoft Store or via the web. I don't know how you would get them onto your device, but BlueStacks could technically be a storefront for Android apps. So you'd be running Windows Core OS as normal, and you'd say, an Android app. So you go into the Microsoft Store, you download BlueStacks, and you download the Android app that you want. That's one way they could do it. But like I said, I am really hoping that they go the sort of Astoria way. Now, I don't believe it's Astoria exactly. I'm pretty sure it isn't, but it will be like that in the sense that it's Microsoft's own technology emulating the Android apps themselves. The problem with Microsoft doing it themselves, though, comes to the legality of it all. And I believe we've talked about this before on the podcast, but for Microsoft to do Android apps on Windows well, it would need a Google Play license, because a lot of Android apps in the Google Play Store require Play services to function correctly or at all. So if Microsoft weren't to do the Play Store, they could easily do Android emulation without the Play Store services, but some apps that users download or want might not be available because they need Play services. So Microsoft would obviously pay a license to Google, but does Microsoft really want to pay a license to Google for every single Windows Core OS device that's ever sold? I don't think so. So there's a problem there, and the other problem is Google may not even allow it. You know, if the Android emulation on Windows is so good, Google might be like, absolutely not. You're undermining our whole Android platform with your Windows platform. You're not having this license. So there's pros and cons to each way of doing it. There's also pros and cons to doing it at all. A lot of people on Twitter have been saying, if Microsoft does this, then isn't that the death of UWP? There's arguments for and against, of course, as is always the case. I think. My question is, how do Android apps help a laptop/tablet device anyway? I get this for Andromeda. I was totally all for it with Andromeda, but with Centaurus, it doesn't make sense to me.
It's well, I mean, as I did in a video this week, I tell people, I'm like, here's a secret. You could run Android apps on Windows 10 right now. Like, yeah, it's always been there through BlueStacks, as you mentioned, right? Like, so it's always been a thing. So how many of you are running Android apps on your laptop, on your Surface? I'm going to guess 98% of you aren't, because you're right, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And as far as like the death of UWP, that presumes a couple of things. First of all, that given the choice between an Android app and say a UWP app or something to store, you'll always go for the Android one. I doubt that. So how app development works on Windows 10 right now is it's not ones and zeros in terms of either or. It's going to be a scale. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking just to get your app onto Windows 10, you have a few options, including PWA, which is going to be pretty low in terms of app development because it's mostly based on your website. And then you can do things like wrap it and UWP to give it even more functionality. So even within a PWA, you have different scaling, right? You could just run it through the browser, install, and call it a day, and there's your PWA app. Or you could do a conversion of a Win32 app, right, and put it in the store that way. Same thing with Electron, right? Say you just want to write an app that works on iOS and Android and across everything, so you make it an Electron app, and then you just convert it. But then say you really just want a native experience in Windows 10. You want to leverage all the APIs. You want all the bells and whistles. That's when you do UWP. Now, the problem there is UWP to write that app is going to require a UWP developer and someone who's familiar with it, and it requires a little bit more precision and honing and, leveraging Windows 10. And that's how you have to think of the scale. And what Microsoft has gotten away from is they don't want to give people an either or. Like, oh, you want to be on Windows 10? You have to write in UWP. You need to rewrite the app or write it from scratch. That was the old way of doing it. And I mentioned this last week. Had we been living in a world where Windows 10 and Windows Phone and Xbox controlled 80% of the app market, that would be fine to dictate. Microsoft's not in that position. And frankly, the world we live in is not like that anymore. So what they're doing is they're giving developers options. I think this, Android, however it's instantiated on Windows 10 or Windows Core OS in this case, it's not, I've never seen an emulated Android app solution solve a problem. It didn't work for BlackBerry. It hasn't worked for Amazon. But it's nice to have as a fallback. No different than running Win32 emulated on ARM, right? It's you prefer to have a native compiled app, but at the same time, it's a nice fallback. And I see this as that. And that's fine. But I don't want people to get their hopes up. And I'm still not clear because, as you mentioned, what app are you going to run? Is Snapchat on a Surface device going to be like?
Yeah, there's no point. There's no point doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like, is this really what you're going to get up in the morning and do versus just firing up your phone? Like, there's certain, and Apple has this problem too, and so doesn't Google. Like, Apple is trying to bring iOS over and bring iOS apps over to Mac, and everybody's like, see, now they're doing it, and it's going to be awesome. And my first question is to you is, what are you going to run on your as an iPhone app? You're going to run on a 15-inch MacBook Pro that's going to like make your life so much better. I think maybe like Instagram, because Instagram, by the way, I just fired up my iPad here, still sucks. But there are going to be a handful of apps that are, because the iPhone and the Android phones are conceptually based on this idea of phone apps, things that always need connectivity and that leverage usually the camera. So I don't know. All this stuff is the same. I'm not really. I'm more curious about the details, how they actually do this, but I'm not really concerned that this is going. Like, people are going to start firing up Android Office and going to be like, oh my God,
it's so much better.
It's so much better than the native Win32 version. Like, really, that's probably never going to happen.
Yeah, like you said, it's how they do this, how they do the emulation that's going to be key here. And I honestly think that they would go doing it via the third-party method, by just allowing the likes of BlueStacks and others to just tap into an API that integrates their emulators into the Windows experience. And the reason for this is because that way Microsoft avoids the whole, UWP is dead because Microsoft is adopting Android and Windows. And at the same time, since it's already a niche thing that people want to do anyway, those who want to run Android apps on Windows are already running BlueStacks, right? And that's a very small minority of people. Everybody else probably doesn't matter. And with Centaurus and Windows Live specifically, that's a platform basically aimed at the web, not at apps. Although you will be able to run Win32 and UWP and PWA apps, of course. The idea is that you'll be using the web browser for most things. You'll be able to install web apps through Edge, and they will integrate into the Windows system and Windows Shell experience, just like they do on Chrome OS. So yeah, this is very interesting. The only reason I can see Microsoft doing it themselves, and this is, stick with me on this because this is the long play, but perhaps if Microsoft were to do Android emulation itself as Centaurus, there's two reasons they could do this. There's two reasons they would want to do this, sorry. The first of which I think is to undermine Google and Android. I fully believe that Microsoft could make Windows the best Android platform out there, which sounds stupid, but Astoria wasn't too bad for its early iteration that it was, and I think if Microsoft really wanted to, they could put smart minds on it and they could make Android apps run great and feel native on Windows, which would then almost kickstart a whole new category of Android devices where app developers are like, there's now 500 million new desktop sized devices that run Android apps. Maybe we should update our Android app to support desktop mode, Then that goes from there, and then Microsoft now has like a hand in technically mobile apps because they now have stolen the thunder from Google and also have a play in Android development. That could be one way of doing things, and that could also aid the second point, which is Andromeda. Maybe this is a play to try and kickstart an app ecosystem for Andromeda. If Microsoft starts adding Android apps into the Microsoft Store and makes Android apps a native experience to the Windows, user base and experience itself, that could also convince developers to start building Android apps that also scale to desktop size, that run natively on Windows, natively in air quotes, of course, natively on Windows, that just operate great and users don't know the difference. And then Andromeda is saved from the app ecosystem problem and it can launch. That's the only two reasons I can see why Microsoft would want to do this themselves, so they can basically steal the app platform from Android. But other than that, I don't see why they do this themselves.
I just want to go off on a side tangent. I got into an argument with people on YouTube. So coming back to the Surface stuff you were talking about earlier regarding Thunderbolt 3. So there's obviously a lot of division out there. A lot of people are like, these devices need Thunderbolt 3. And I don't take that position for a simple reason. I think a lot of you don't know what Thunderbolt 3 is or how you would actually leverage it. I keep hearing a lot of people talk about eGPUs. I think eGPUs always will be a niche product, okay? I don't think many of you are serious about committing to an external GPU because you could do it right now. Now, the housing is as cheap as $300. They go up to around $500 too. But yeah, you can go buy the housing for $300. Then you got to go buy the graphics card for, pick your poison, between $300 and $1,000, depending on which one you're going to go for. It's a huge investment. Now, some people are definitely going to do this, and a lot of professional people may do this. But let's be clear here. This is some high-end stuff. It's very expensive, and it's not cheap to do. And the reason you do it is either for gaming or you're going to use it for, video processing. And again, it exists out there, and for some people, that is the solution. But like when I talk to like Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, like why he doesn't use eGPUs because he's mobile. He's like it doesn't make sense to have an external GPU. I have like 3 of them. They're heavy as hell. They're about I don't know. I gotta weigh them actually, but they're like they gotta be at least 20 pounds. Like you're not gonna throw this into your bag and take it with you. So they're not mobile at all. But he needs a laptop that's just powerful enough to go on the road to process video. And then when you're at that point anyway, so the only use of an eGPU is for when you come home or to your office. And again, I get that. There are some people that need it. And then I hear people say, well, it gets faster file transfer speeds. But again, you need to then buy a TB3 SSD external storage device. I've reviewed them. I have a Dell one over here. It's around $500. It's super expensive. That makes sense for some people. I get it. If you're doing a lot of video editing, I don't see though. I think you're full of crap if you're going to buy a Surface Pro and you're going to use an external Thunderbolt 3 SSD. Like that's your dream. Because what are you doing on a Surface Pro that you need to transfer such massive files back and forth hundreds of times a day that are like, I'm talking files that are like 500-600 megabytes or gigabytes in size, because that's the work pattern of someone who's doing video editing. And in which case, if you're doing video editing, why are you using a Surface Pro? Like that will never be a video editing machine. Now, we didn't preclude Surface Book 3 getting Thunderbolt 3. I could actually see that totally happening. I'll be surprised if that's not the case. And there, that machine makes sense because there you're going to have like sophisticated graphics, the RTX graphics, I presume, and that is the machine you do video editing on. And their Thunderbolt 3 could make more sense. I still don't think it's required. It'd be nice to have, but many people try to find an external Thunderbolt 3 drive. They're not only super expensive, there are not a lot of them out there. They'll probably change down the road. I'm not saying it's always going to be the case, but it's still a very niche thing here. And then the other thing is gaming. A lot of people say, well, because of the eGPU thing. But what have we been talking about the last few podcasts here? xCloud. Like xCloud for most people is going to negate the need to have an external GPU. Like how can I tell you go invest $1,000 for a top of the line eGPU they can only use at home when you dock your computer versus xCloud, which would allow you to stream the game to your device wherever, whenever you just have Wi-Fi or 5G. Like, I mean, which one of those do you think is going to have more consumer appeal? The one where I tell you can have $1,000 laptop that you can stream your games to, or the one where you got to buy a $2,000 laptop and then another 1,000 for an external GPU that you can only now use at home. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I find Thunderbolt, I have devices with Thunderbolt 3, barely use them. USB Type-C 3.1 allows you to get external displays, allows you to recharge the device, allows you to do data transfers. Like you get a lot of that stuff already. So I'm not saying if a device comes with Thunderbolt 3, I'm mad. Quite the opposite. I'm just not seeing a ton of people using Thunderbolt 3 to its maximum performance. And for the people who are, they tend to be buying 15-inch laptops with a lot of horsepower, a lot of graphics, $2,000-$3,000 devices. But like I'm starting to review the HP NV13. It's a beautiful laptop, has a Type-C port on it. It's not Thunderbolt 3. People are like, really? No Thunderbolt 3? I'm like, this laptop starts at $750. like what do you want to use Thunderbolt 3 on this thing for? So I just want to put that into perspective. I get it's nice to have these things. And like I said, if someone gives me a laptop with Thunderbolt 3, I'm never going to be like, ew. Of course I'll be happy it has it on there. I just think a lot of people are saying they want it, and they really don't have any intentions of actually using it. And I don't think many of you are serious about buying a Surface Pro, and then spending another $1,000 for an external GPU just so you can game at home. And I get some of you will want that, and there are alternatives out there. I'm just saying you're part of a small market of it out there. And to suggest that Surface Pro is going to tank or not do well because it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3, I just don't buy that. I just don't see the argument there. I think it'd be nice to have. I don't think it's required to have.
See, so I assume, and I'm not defending Microsoft's decision to include or not include it, but I assume Microsoft does market research here, and they are asking their customers what they want to see most in Surface devices in the future. And I'm guessing Thunderbolt 3 isn't coming up too much, because if everybody that they ever polled on Surface was asking for Thunderbolt 3, and I'm not talking about just people on the internet, I'm talking about actual like focus groups. At Microsoft, they do tests that they bring in people, just normal people from the streets, and they talk to people. They also talk to their partners, they talk to their customers, their enterprise customers specifically, and of course, I guess they talk to some consumer customers as well. And they ask them, and they say, hey, all right, so what do you want to see in the next Surfaces? And, they take feedback and stuff. And I'm guessing, not a lot of people are asking for Thunderbolt 3, because like I said, if everybody was asking for it, they would probably try to strive to put it in one of their future devices. But it's not. It doesn't seem to be happening. Right? Like I said, maybe the Surface Book 3 has it, but the Pro line specifically doesn't have it this year. And I'm assuming the Surface laptop line won't either, because it will be an AMD device. But yeah, so I'm guessing Microsoft isn't too worried about the backlash it's going to get from the media, undoubtedly, that says another year, another no Thunderbolt 3 device.
Yeah,
Microsoft.
It'll be from our audience, our core audience, and some tech blogs, because it will be a thing you can actually point to and go, that's not there. That's technically a negative, But Surface Line's always, I can already tell you, whatever's announced in October, people are going to say it's too expensive. So it's like, we already know that, right? There's certain things with the Surface line will never be the latest, greatest, cutting edge experimental stuff, which is weird because they're more about the experimental form factor and experience, but not necessarily the latest, like I'd be surprised if they use 4K OLED. Like, I wouldn't mind 4K OLED. Oh, awesome. But 4K OLED also has downsides. Like it gets worse battery life. It just does. And it always will get worse battery life. That's why everybody's making it like an option right now. But that's sort of the trade-off, where it's hard to do touch in 4K OLED, right? There's always sort of a trade-off there. But you're absolutely right about the focus stuff. Like you and I both had this experience with HoloLens too. We heard it was going to be ARM, and we're like, ARM. Oh man, ARM. Qualcomm said they're only going to do ARM devices with LTE. That means HoloLens 2 will have LTE. And then we were thinking in our head, like, how cool would it be just to walk around with HoloLens 2 on your head and be on the internet all the time? To you, Zach and I, and probably some of you, that makes a lot of sense. HoloLens 2 comes out, gets announced, no LTE. Why? Exactly what Zach was saying. Microsoft talked to partners, not our group, not our audience, companies who have been buying HoloLens and are testing HoloLens, using it in their actual workflows, the actual people putting money on the line here. And LTE wasn't one of their top features. It was battery, it was cost, it was comfort, it was interaction model. It was all those other things took precedence. That's not saying Microsoft doesn't want to put LTE into HoloLens at some point. It just, they said flat out, they're like, wasn't something that these companies were asking for. And they said, don't forget, it has Bluetooth. You can actually tether it to your phone if you wanted to. But it's important to separate what that 2% is screaming for versus what the 98% actually care about. And sometimes we, in our community, the fact you're listening to this podcast tells me you're probably a pro user and someone who follows this stuff pretty religiously. I get why you would want Thunderbolt 3 and everything. Like, I get it. I'm just saying, for regular people, it's not necessarily a big thing. But I do hope for Surface Book 3. I think I'll be disappointed if it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3. Surface laptop, Surface Pro, definitely not. Surface Go, no. Give me Type C. I want Type C with 3.1, but I don't think I need Thunderbolt 3.
Yeah. So, briefly back onto the Centaurus stuff, because I wasn't.
Sorry.
The other thing that the Forbes article mentioned, which I haven't heard anything about, so this is interesting, is iCloud service integration of some kind. I don't know what that means, but iCloud, for those that know, is Apple's sort of cloud-based service where you Apple ID, you got cloud files in iCloud, so just one, basically OneDrive, etc., etc. I don't know what that means. My assumption is that's just referring to the new iCloud app that's in the Microsoft Store, because that will run on Windows Lite, since it is. I believe it is a Win32, but Windows Lite can emulate Win32, so it should run, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea what that means. The 9-inch screens is interesting, because I have seen prototypes of Centaurus, but I've never had the chance to sort of be like, let me measure everything in detail. So I knew it was like around. It was like I thought it was 8 or 9 inches. To be honest,
Yeah.
but yeah, 9 inches makes sense. And when it's folded out, it's a 4:3 aspect ratio, which is interesting, I think. But
That's what the X1, the ThinkPad X1 is too.
is it really? Okay, maybe there's a whole
Yeah, it's
thing
four by
behind that.
three. Yeah,
Yeah.
not three. And then to people wondering why does that matter? Because typically Surface devices have been 3 by 2.
You know what? No, I think why. I think because what Microsoft is going to do with this first generation of foldables is market them as digital journals. And when you close a 4:3, it looks like a book.
And having held and tried out the X1 at 4 by 3 at 100%, go look at the photos of it. When I think it's folded, it absolutely looks like a book. It's kind of crazy.
So I don't.
Yeah.
I assume this is just only a coincidence, but a lot of Surface marketing recently has like a laptop, like the Surface Book or Surface laptop, and then like a notebook next to it. I'm assuming what Microsoft is trying to go for here is to replace that notebook, like the actual pen and paper, with a foldable Windows device, and say, hey, we see people with pen and paper every day writing in notes in their notebooks and stuff. How about we just make a foldable device that can replace that? And I'm assuming since Centaurus will be one of those devices that they try to market as a digital journal, in which case it could be called Surface Journal, which I'm all for. But yeah, I genuinely think that's how they're going to start marketing these foldables at first, as sort of digital notebooks that you can use. I know we've had this conversation about Andromeda, but that was a pocket notebook. That's different from an actual notebook, just so everyone knows.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I think they're going to do with Centaurus. So yeah, this Forbes article is interesting. Forbes doesn't usually have the best track record for stuff, but they sort of confirmed a few things that we've been hearing already. Plus a couple of additional info, such as the 9-inch screens and whatever. I will be interested to see if Microsoft ships Android support on Centaurus. I don't know if they will. Like I said, this is stuff they've been talking about, and I believe some work has gone into it, but I don't know. That doesn't mean it will ship. As far as I'm aware, it might never ship. We don't know. We'll have to see in October or whenever Centaurus is announced whether they advertise Android app support as a feature on the box. I don't know if they will.
And also to back a little bit to the screen size, I had to look up the info because I forgot it. The ThinkPad X1, same aspect ratio, 4:3, but its total screen size is 13.3 inch. So that's
folded out, right?
That's folded out. So that's basically the equivalent of a tall looking laptop, like an Ultrabook, right? Mm-hmm. Folded in half, the screen size is 9.6 inch. So assuming Forbes is accurate, it's actually just 9 inch. I'm not doing the math here live, but it sounds like it's going to be around the same size of the Surface Pro's current screen, which is 12.3 inch.
Yeah.
Folded out. So if you think of it, so it's going to be slightly smaller than the that's kind of tiny. I'm not saying tiny in a bad sense. I'm saying for people who are expecting Andromeda, go look at my ThinkPad X1 foldable hands-on. You'll see there's a photo of me holding it, and you can see it's the size of a book. So if you think of it, it's even slightly smaller than that. It's a pretty. Yeah. That's a nimble device. That's because Zach can always joke around about can it fit in the pocket? That could probably fit in a pocket.
A big pocket, yeah.
Yeah. So this hinges. Funny on whether if it's actually 9 inch or 9.6 inch, but that means unfolded it should be around 12 to 13 inches, which is kind of interesting.
I don't know if that makes a huge deal with Centaurus because it's not unlike the Lenovo foldable. This is 2 screens, so there will be a slight bezel/gap down the middle. Now I'm unsure if I assume the user experience is able to cater to that and it can act as one full screen, but from the stuff I've heard and seen, it sounds like the operating system will mostly treat them as 2 separate displays. For example, things like the taskbar, which if you haven't seen my Windows Lite sort of screenshot mock-up, the taskbar is centered. On a device like Centaurus, there's a huge sort of line down the middle, so how does the start button fit in there? Basically, how Microsoft treats these dual-screen devices, at least, is one side is the focused screen, and the other side is the thing you last used. Or that's a bad way to describe it, but if I describe it better here, you may understand how it works. So, for example, if I'm interacting with the screen on the left, then the taskbar and all of its elements show up on that screen, and the screen on the right doesn't have the taskbar, but it still has the app that I put there for whatever reason. And if I tap on the other screen, if I tap on the right screen, then the taskbar pops up on that side instead, and I can interact with it there, but my app continues to run as normal, and the app that I was just using on the left screen remains as is. It's still doing whatever it was doing, but the shell itself is now shifted over to the right screen, so it sort of adapts in that way, so it knows which screen you're using and where you might want to interact with stuff. that's how they get around the whole gap in the middle thing. It's not a huge gap. It's just a few millimeters. But don't expect it to be a bezel-less device. That's all I'm going to say. It has a few bezels on it, mainly along the top and bottom.
8. It has 8 bezels. Not really thick. They added more.
They're not super thick. It has bezels along the top and bottom, thinner on the right and left. But yeah, it does have bezels. It's not a bezel-less device. It's not like the Andromeda concepts.
Well, they need it though, because again, the problem with the leaks, and I know this is why the Surface team hates probably leaks, is we're skipping literally all the details, right?
Yeah,
and that's
we're generalizing.
Yeah, and that's hard to do because, I keep saying, like, you look at the Surface laptop too, and a lot of people here will dismiss it, like, oh, it doesn't have Type C, it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3, you do whatever, pick whatever thing you don't like about it, and I'll still go to my deathbed saying, but the Surface laptop in terms of design and the core experience is the best laptop I've ever used. It's the most comfortable. It's the most ergonomic. Typing, audio, the web camera, the display, the way it opens and closes, the way it feels. Everything about it is basically perfect. But if I just gave you the specs on paper, you would look at it and say it's unremarkable. This is actually kind of my thesis for I just reviewed the Razer Blade Stealth that's coming out in a few days in Windows Central. Is simply with the Blade Stealth. When you look at it, it's on paper, it's like, who cares? It's just an Ultrabook. But there's something about it that when you use it, it's just the core experience. So same thing with whatever this device is. Like a lot of people go like, the bezels. But like, for instance, it has to have like Windows Hello facial recognition, right? Like you would expect that to be, I'd be surprised if they just fall back to fingerprint reader. But in order to have a facial recognition, you do have to have a little space, right? As Apple knows. But more so, if you go watch my Latitude 7400 review that went up this week, I talked about this new Intel technology, which it detects your presence and locks the screen, all that. Like that's going to be standard, I think, for a lot of PCs coming out in the next year. And it would be surprised me Microsoft doesn't do something. This is part of the RealSense Intel stuff that they've been working on for years. I'd be surprised if it doesn't do fun tricks like that, right? So this device is all going to be about, or the audio, like, audio has been so bad in laptops the last few years, but now companies are finally getting it. Like I expect this device will stop really good audio because of front-facing speakers. Like, where do you put speakers if you have no bezel? So all this stuff needs to come together for that core experience. And I still expect whatever this device is, it's going to be like real enjoyable to use. So I can't wait. For me, it's about the details. I can't wait to hear those.
Yeah. For me, all the details are in the software, really. The hardware, I hear, is great.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I hear the hardware is going to be pretty great. It comes down to the operating system and how the operating system handles this form factor, because that's going to be key. Because,
Right.
that's how you convince people that this is something they need. It
needs to be
software.
It's got to be fluent. It's got to have good animations. It's got to look nice. It's got to be consistent for Zach. But
Yes.
it has to be consistent because this UI is built for. This isn't Windows 10, shoehorned into this device. This is a different shell. So this has to have been built for this experience. And that is super
There's no
exciting.
control panel. There's no legacy file explorer. It's
Fax
all new
machine.
here. Yeah, in fact, there's no Paint. Oh, there might be in the store, I guess, at that point. But by default, it doesn't come with things like Paint or Notepad.
That is I agree. This is going to be the real exciting part because we've seen Windows 10. We're familiar with Windows 10. We talk about Windows 10 updates being kind of like, all right, we got some new stuff here, but nothing remarkable happening. But when Microsoft commits to like doing a new OS experience, I think of Windows Phone 7. I think of Microsoft Band. I think of Zune, even Xbox. Like when they get a chance to sort of like wipe the slate clean, they actually do some pretty innovative stuff. Now, the question is, which team is doing this, right? Is this like the Windows, I don't want to say the Windows 10 team, that's mean. But is this like the same folks who are like, came up with Windows Phone 7's Metro UI and the Zune team? Is it like that, level of, creativity? Or is this like, I don't know, the team that's being super conservative?
George, a lot of people are saying, so how is the typing experience going to be? This is a good question. I have heard of accessories and things that Microsoft has been toying with that could aid that, such as like a thing that lays over the bottom screen that you're using for the keyboard and trackpad that gives it tactile feedback. Also, if you're wondering about, because there will obviously be a virtual version of these for the keyboard and trackpad, and in fact they're in Windows today. You can actually find them if you right click on the taskbar. I believe it's show touch keyboard and show touchpad. those they probably won't be the exact same UIs. They'll be slightly tailored to the smaller screen and for Windows Core OS. But that tech is already in Windows. You can already use Windows with a virtual trackpad. You can already use Windows with a virtual keyboard. They would just need to. They've redesigned them slightly just so they fit on the screens that Centaurus has and such and so forth. But the code is already there and it already works. So you can try them out yourself today and see if you like them. I actually do like the virtual touchpad. It feels like a precision touchpad, so that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, this is all pretty exciting. Centaurus does appear to be happening. Well, let's not speak too soon, I guess. But yeah, they are working on it, and hopefully we'll hear more about it later this year.
I will say, if you do the keyboard right, I'm looking at, the iPad. I have the 9.7 with iOS or iPad OS, and it has a split keyboard experience. Yeah. And because of the shape of the device, it actually works surprisingly well. Mm-hmm. Now, Microsoft has split keyboards as well. They have virtual keyboards. They have the Windows Phone team that worked on keyboards. They have the Swift key team working on I feel like, given the chance to write a keyboard for this device that's virtual, I think they can nail it. I really do. I have faith that they could pull it off. And I don't think we should judge on the current Windows 10 keyboard necessarily.
Sure. But the Microsoft has been working on the Windows 10 keyboard, virtual keyboard, and that's not for Windows 10 tablets. I mean, sure, it applies to them, but this is for Windows Core OS. It's for these dual screen devices where you will be using one side of the screen as a keyboard and mouse. So this is all of this back-end work that's going into Windows 10 desktop right now is also applicable to to Windows Core OS as well, and you can absolutely guarantee that code will be in Windows Core OS.
I can confirm I've really never used the virtual keyboard on my Surface Studio
it's not terrible. It's really not terrible.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's cool, but yeah, obviously that's not the primary interaction.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right, let's talk about OneDrive news quickly because it's not that exciting. And plus, I've ranted way too long in this podcast and hogged all the airway. So OneDrive so a lot of people, you get 1 terabyte of OneDrive storage space if you subscribe to Office 365, which, I still love Office 365 because years ago people were like, I'm not paying a yearly subscription for it. It's not going to go anywhere in here. It's like one of their biggest businesses yet. But you get a terabyte, which for most people, a terabyte is kind of a lot for storage. But for some of you just wanted the option, like, I need more than a terabyte. Just give me the ability to buy it. And so you can now buy in 200 gigabyte increments more storage space. You can go up to, I believe, 2 terabytes now. At 200 gigabytes, it's an extra $2 a month if you want it. If you just go for the full 1,000 gigabytes or a terabyte, it's an extra $10 a month. Not cheap. I don't know. Is it cheap? I don't know. It's like I have no use for this, but I'm glad it's an option now for people because it's one of those things. It's like people weren't necessarily going like, just give me another terabyte for free. They're like, I'll pay for it. And so like Microsoft should just be like, we'll give you the option. And you have that option now. So that's kind of cool. There's also more of a security feature, which is there's a personal vault now in OneDrive. So OneDrive itself is pretty secure. It's based on your Microsoft login authentication, and if hopefully you have 2FA involved there. But still, you don't know if it's open on your computer, someone gets to it, they can get access to all your files. So what this is now is a subsection within OneDrive, which allows you to store stuff at a different level of lockdown, basically. Now, it ties into 2FA, Microsoft account as well, so you basically need to re-log in. We can also apparently do Windows Hello with it, as you would expect, which is kind of nifty. If you sync that folder up to your current PC, that area is now encrypted through BitLocker too, so it's safe on your device. Again, I don't think a ton of people are going to use this, but for people who do know they want to use it, I think it's a great solution. If you have documents, photos, your pervy photos, you want to keep extra secure, you now have that ability to do it. So it's always nice to see OneDrive adding these features, even if a ton of people aren't going to use them. It's just nice options to have. So go check that out right now. I believe it's live now. If not, it's coming real soon. Whew.
Do you know what's in the store, Dan?
Yes, I do.
We talked about this last week. We basically predicted it, which, to be fair, it wasn't that difficult to predict. We could see it was coming. But Cortana is now in the Microsoft Store. Technically, unofficially, Microsoft hasn't announced it yet. I'm assuming they're waiting for the next Insider build to start announcing this stuff officially. But yes, the Cortana beta app is now available in the Microsoft Store. You can download it. Doesn't actually do anything yet, because like I said, they haven't announced it. But it does confirm that Microsoft will be servicing future Cortana experiences via the Microsoft Store. And this makes perfect sense. This is all part of Microsoft decoupling elements of the operating system and allowing them to update independently. So now the Cortana thing can be updated whenever Microsoft feels like they need to update it, just as the new Edge can, and possibly even the Shell in the future, as we talked about a couple of episodes ago. Very exciting stuff. Not a whole lot to talk about on that front. It is cool to see. And they have like some conceptual images of it. It is very pretty. It looks very nice. And I am very excited about Cortana again, which is fun to say in 2019.
Yeah, and so some people, point out like, they baked Cortana into the OS and didn't help them at all. How's an app going to be any better? And I think conceptually, there's having this app and able to be updated and tweaked. I mean, and this isn't unusual. Like, and first of all, we should also mention it doesn't mean Cortana is not shipping with PCs. This will ship with 20H1. The expectation is when you install 20H1, even on a brand new device, Cortana will still be there. It just means it can.
I also want to add to that the experience will be integrated with the Windows shell. It won't run as an app window. It will be attached to your taskbar, just like current Cortana is. And Microsoft can do that. They have the capabilities of integrating this app into the shell experience.
That was going to be my next point, which is this is exactly how Game Bar operates.
Yeah.
So if you do the WinG thing and you go into Game Bar, and Game Bar's got like really crazy right now. Jez did our senior Xbox reporter, Jez Corden, did like a really good deep dive into it and why it's so impressive. But Game Bar is a UWP app, and it goes through the store. It actually has, I think, 2 or 3 components in the store. Now, you don't go install Game Bar when you like get a new Windows 10 device or new upgrade, whatever. It's already built in. It just means that team can tweak and update its feature set through the store, and they do it. Mine gets updated like once a week almost. They're always like doing little things to it, and so Cortana as an app is going to be in that same sense. I suppose it also means you can uninstall Cortana. And
that's not necessary. I mean, maybe via PowerShell, but by default they can easily just disable being able to uninstall that.
Right. Although Microsoft has been pretty good about letting users uninstall.
Sure, and also
apps.
this really does open the door to the idea of being able to install third-party launch.
Right. That's what my next point was going to be.
Yeah.
Like maybe this would allow people then to swap out Alexa, even though I still don't see Alexa doing a ton more than Cortana in terms of actual Windows PC stuff. In theory, this could allow that to swap out, which would help at least certain markets, right? And even demographics. I saw HP this week pushing Alexa more than Cortana, but these were on specific consumer devices aimed at millennials. And I could actually make that argument, like, okay, actually Alexa probably does make more sense to like a millennial than it does necessary for someone who's involved in a business laptop who wants Cortana, which would be more valuable. But yeah, and this would allow Microsoft to iterate faster. They can actually add new features instead of relying on twice a year OS updates. That team could just push out updates. If there's a bug, they can fix it. And a lot of people say, well, isn't Cortana right now web-based anyway, the card view system? And then it is, the info it pulls down. But for one, I don't think Zach and I have ever been really happy with that iteration of Cortana. Yeah, because it's just a black, right? It's got the black borders, and then it brings in a white web view. Yeah. Looks kind of weird. This new version is all white and just looks like a lot more.
It has dark mode as well. If you're running Windows in dark theme, then it does have a dark theme also.
Good, yeah. So it allows them to do those kind of things as well as add features, integrate with their hardware more, without having to be dependent upon the Windows 10 team when they're ready to ship. I don't know. This is always good. I think we should always be excited. Like I said, like Xbox Game Bar is a good example. Like no one was like, that should be an app. It'd be so much better. But it is an app, and it is better because of it. So I think all this is good news.
Do you briefly want to talk about Bill Gates' comments? I know you mentioned it before the podcast, and I forgot
to
just
add real quickly. Yeah, I forgot where the interview was, unfortunately. But there was a recent interview with Bill Gates, and yeah, he basically said one of his biggest regrets was letting Google run away with Android and stealing that market. Like, and I've said this before, that it was their market to lose, Microsoft's, and they did. You know, Microsoft had Windows Mobile in 2002, and then they started adding cellular support later on, and then it was them, BlackBerry, Nokia competing in the smartphone space, and then Apple walked in 2007. Released the iPhone, which didn't even have any apps and had no keyboard. We all laughed at it, myself included. Guilty as charged. Ballmer went on video, laughed at it, said, and everybody, missed it. And then Android came along not soon after, and then Microsoft was caught flat-footed, and Microsoft never took mobile seriously. They didn't see it as, I mean, some people did at Microsoft. The people who worked on Windows Phone 7, I would say, saw it as that. But the company as a whole didn't pivot to see mobile as that's the next compute platform. And to be fair, Microsoft at the time was contending with Windows Vista and then eventually Windows 8, both of which was their cash cows and burned terribly. And so they had that fire to put out. I suppose if Windows Vista and Windows 8 like sailed along and had no issues and people loved it, they could have devoted more resources to phone and maybe had a better chance there. But from everything we heard with Vista and Windows 8, they've refocused all their attention to right that ship. And Gates basically admitted that, yeah, I screwed this up. And it follows on Ballmer, who admitted the same thing. He made the mistake. And the only reason I bring this up is because everybody blames Nadella for killing phone, which he technically did. But I've also been saying he inherited. He didn't take over till like 2014, 2015. Windows Mobile had already been old. It's almost over a decade old at that point. And he just inherited that momentum. And he gave those teams, he was like, listen, release your Windows 10 mobile devices, release your new hardware, prove me wrong, show me what you got. And let's be honest, Windows 10 mobile stuff and the 950, despite the efforts from HP with the Elite X3, which is an awesome device, it just wasn't enough to overcome what had already transpired. And I think, Gates admitting that, I don't think is like supremely revelatory. I think we all knew it, but it's still interesting to hear.
Maybe he listened to our podcast and was like, "Oh, it was my fault."
Yeah, right. Because I think it's obvious at this point. It's a shame. I think and this is why when we talk about HoloLens and mixed reality, I find it so interesting because this is a case where they really are thinking down the road, like a long way down the road, and they're building out this ecosystem so they don't react to the market because. And this system they're building with HoloLens is open. Like, that's what's crazy about it. I was talking with Microsoft this week about it. Like, the old Microsoft would not necessarily have integrated with ARKit, for instance, Google's and Apple's implementation of mixed reality. What they would have done, and if they had, they would have been like, all right, you can use our system or we'll use your system, but you got to download our runtimes and our stuff, our tools to make it work on your device. And that's not what Microsoft's doing. They're making Azure Spatial Anchor's ability to work directly with those competing systems. That's a very different Microsoft. And what that's going to allow them to do is just be, even if HoloLens 5 isn't like the main consumer device, the technology, whatever it's powering Apple's thing, will have Microsoft technology in it, either hardware or software. It's going to have it. And that's a better position for Microsoft to be in. They don't even have to rely on their own product necessarily to succeed. They can rely on having the market itself just be reliant on Microsoft technology in general, whether it's AI, it's the Azure spatial anchoring, cloud computing, all that stuff. I think and that's why we should be cautious about what Microsoft's doing, but at the same time, we should applaud them for not only thinking that far ahead, but they're doing it, I would say, at a conservative pace. They could have said, like, HoloLens 2, it's available now. Go to Best Buy, pick it up, $3,000, right? And it would have gone nowhere for a consumer device. It would have been terrible. But they're not doing that. They're taking their time with these things. And Windows 10 on ARM, to come back to that, again, they didn't go like commercials on TV, Windows 10 on ARM. Like, they didn't. I could see an old Microsoft having to done that. Like, oh, it's ready. Okay, let's go. $1 million blitz on it. Oh, it failed. Cancel it because we just lost so much money, right? But they're not doing it this time. Now they're taking their time. They're pacing themselves. They're waiting to pounce on that market. And I see this Microsoft as a better Microsoft than the one from the 2000s. And it worked for Surface Pro.
I do find Bill Gates' comments interesting. Now, I am going to paraphrase there because I don't have his actual interview up for me to read from, but he said something along the lines of there's space for one other non-Apple mobile platform, and that Android got there. But it's interesting to me how he assumes that Apple has always got to dominate with the iPhone, from day one. If Microsoft had come up with the iPhone in 2006, why would have Apple still be number one today? I don't know why he mentioned it like that. I think he should have been a bit more like, we should be the Apple of the mobile industry. Why is he settling for the Android? I guess Android technically has more.
What he means, I think, is because Android was an open platform that gave the beauty of why Android is so successful
It's
is
because it's
because
open.
all they did was copy the PC program that Microsoft
But that's
did. But
funny. Yeah.
they made an operating system, then let their partners run with it, and computer, everybody was able to scan and do whatever they want to it, and and Google did that more so almost with Android, but it was technically free. If you remember, that was a big thing,
Right.
right? It was
Yeah.
free. So Android was the more open model that just allowed more creativity. It goes back to XDA. XDA, for those is a popular forum. Windows Mobile was huge on it because you could hack the hell out of Windows Mobile, and it had a huge community around it. Um, Android took over that. Windows Phone 7, as good as it was, as much as I liked it, was so strict. Let's go back. I mean, you could only run certain apps. The apps couldn't do a lot of stuff. They were locked down to the operating system. There were no notifications, for instance. Then when they did get notifications, they could only ping a couple times an hour. Uh, the hardware was, remember the hardware requirements? Like it had to be a certain screen orientation,
Yeah.
certain screen size, had to have hardware buttons for, and they made all these requirements. And I get it. They were trying to guarantee the experience, and a lot of us liked that experience. At the same time, Google didn't do that. And so I think that's why Gates
I think
spoke
one of
like
the
that.
biggest things that Microsoft did wrong with Windows Phone in the early days as well was they charged for it. OEMs
Right.
had to
Yeah.
pay for Windows Phone licenses, whereas
Yep.
Android, like you
That was
said,
bomb.
was yeah,
Yeah.
Android was free. Microsoft sort of immediately made Windows Phone free
Yeah.
to OEMs. The second Android had even had a hint of becoming a threat
Well,
because
they saw it as, yeah, I mean, he saw it as Windows for desktop, the same model.
yeah,
We could just
and
charge
he
our
shouldn't have.
partners.
He was wrong to do that.
I
Man,
think
if
it's,
only we had a time machine.
yeah. But I mean, I'd want to, that decision, I agree, in hindsight was bad. At the same time, I think it was because he was like, well, we nailed desktop. We have all our partners there. We have Samsung, we have LG, we have HTC. They're going to make phones for us.
Mm.
And we'll just follow the same licensing model that worked for us in the past. The problem was, is
Yep.
I don't think they anticipated how fast smartphones were going to grow and how important they were. And I would like to say I would have noticed that and been like, maybe we should rethink this. But yeah, hindsight's always 2020, man. You never know what's going to totally work or what's not going to work until it's a little too
Yeah.
late.
Well, RIP Windows Phone. Actually, it's still in support for another 6 months. So
Yeah, right. There you go.
we've got 6 months left, guys.
Yep.
Exciting.
So, yeah, someone brought up Pro Shot. Yeah, that was a good example. Like how you can never replace the default camera app.
Yeah. You could do
That
it in
wa-
Windows 10, couldn't you? Windows 10 Mobile. Or could you not? Maybe you couldn't.
I don't think you could.
Wow. Wow, indeed.
Yeah, they had all sorts of, but there were some weird ideas. They did have lenses, which was interesting. Lenses was sort of the way around that. You could have the camera app and then have a mini sub programs in it, but lenses were always a little cumbersome. But still, it was a neat idea at least. That
Yeah.
team was cool. I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully one day they'll try again with Andromeda.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, that wraps it up for the podcast, and I ranted way too long. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry, Zach, for taking up again so much of the podcast. But now we're going to use some of this time to talk to the audience and get some Q&A. If you're listening to this recorded, as always, you don't get to hear that part. We don't do it because there's a lot of dead space and it's kind of weird. But as always, you can join us Fridays, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on mixer.com/Windows Central or our YouTube channel at Windows Central 2, where you can watch us live in video and also participate in the Q&A. As always, though, follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. For more information, hit me up for questions and comments. Same thing with Zach at ZACBOWDEN. We always appreciate it and always appreciate you guys tuning in to us. Don't forget to spread the word. If you do like this podcast, share with your friends and family. Let us know how we can make it better, and we'll try to work on that. But thanks for listening, and take care, everyone.
Nice. So yes, as we mentioned, we'll be hanging around for 10 minutes or so to answer any questions that anyone has in the chat. If there are no questions, then we won't be here for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's how that goes. So please, fire away if you can. Did you discuss the new Edgium stuff? We didn't because, to be honest, I'm pretty sure they announced all of that at Build. The privacy stuff, the like tracking, yeah, they announced all that at
Yeah,
Build.
that was announced. Yeah.
I know it's now available in preview, but we've already talked about it. Do you think the Alcantara for Surface laptop will improve this fall? I don't know. I don't know if they can do much else to it, really.
I think they could always improve upon. Like again, this gets back to like making the bezels thinner. Like they'll come up with like a new, you know, a new improvement manufacturing process, more stain resistant. Like I think that's always minor stuff that they can improve and tweak upon. Yeah.
Yeah. Any update on the Surface earbuds? No updates. We are well, the rumor is they'll show up in October. But yeah, we don't know anything else on them.
Which is better, Surface Go or Surface Pro 4? I find those to be very different devices. The biggest thing with the Surface Go is going to be the processor is going to be a little bit slower, and the screen size and the whole thing is smaller.
Yeah.
Small devices have pros and cons. They're easy to take around with you. They're fun to use. I find staring at one for a couple hours a little taxing on my eyes. Of course, I'm also old as AF, but Zach may be a little bit better. I find them just very different experiences. So,
what was I going to say? Yeah, I find the Surface Go a tiny bit too small. I think the original Surface 3 was the perfect size for that device line. And, yeah, they made it a bit too small.
Swizzler says, I asked Dan a question on Twitter. I didn't see this. With Mixer's internal changes recently and Windows Central not writing any articles on it, is our bias because we're partnered? All you're talking about, so what changed, I believe, at Mixer, the only thing I know of, there were no announcements in terms of
people,
official.
Didn't they? Or let people go.
So Mixer had some original programming, which is always a weird thing, but it was a way to boost the channel and have like kind of regular shows on this thing. And they paid talents basically to be on there. And yeah, after E3, after the fiscal year ended, they basically canceled a lot of those shows. It's a shame. A lot of those people were really talented. I enjoyed it. But I mean, we also didn't write a story when they canceled. What was the Windows?
Windows. This Week in Windows or something.
Yeah, This Week in Windows. Like, you guys remember This Week in Windows? They would do a show every week, and
that was a weird show.
Yeah, they were talking about apps and news and stuff like that. It was a way, but that show got canceled. We didn't do an article on it, and I don't remember any of you talking about it. I find this just it's like marketing decisions, right? It's sort of like,
yeah.
Do you remember when they ran ads on TV for the Surface Pro and then they stopped? Like, how can we do an article on it? It's like, well, I mean, budgets end, budgets change. Like, I don't know. I didn't really watch those Mixer shows, but I don't watch a lot on Mixer or Twitch for that fact.
It wasn't something that we were really. It sounds rude. You just weren't interested in it, really. It does happen at companies, and it is sad, of course. But it's not like us writing an article would get them justice or convince Microsoft to rehire them and restart those shows again.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Also,
I mean, Mixer...
our gaming editor Jez Colin wasn't here this week. That's why. Primarily, he wasn't around, so that's why I wasn't doing.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. I don't think Mixer's doing quite well. I mean, Twitch is still Twitch, right? I don't want to but Mixer it has advantages for Microsoft being deeply integrated into Windows 10 and Xbox, for instance, something that Twitch can never do. But I wouldn't read too much into this. That said, I wish all the best of luck to those people who are laid off. It's a shame. I know Kate. I forgot her last name. She was actually on the Windows show we're talking about, and that's a shame. But it's not like, I don't know, does Amazon and Twitch pay for individual shows too? I'm not really sure. I think Mixer would probably rather take that budget, try to attract game streamers, which is always an ongoing thing, away from Twitch, and that may be a better use of that money because it's probably where it'll work better.
You mentioned a taskbar in Centaurus. Does that mean lights won't have gestures? I think there'll still be some gestures. Andromeda was predominantly a gesture-based system, but yeah, I'm not too sure about gestures on Centaurus. I mean, there's not really much need for it since the real estate is bigger, so you can fit elements like a taskbar or a dock, whatever you want to call it, at the bottom of the screen. But on Andromeda, where there's a small screen, when you have it in just one screen mode, there's not a lot of space for things. So you could swipe in from the left to open the start menu. You could swipe up to open Control Center. You swipe from the right to open Cortana / the Notification Center, and then swipe down to, I think, close the app or something like that. Yeah, it was very gestury, but like I said, Centaurus is bigger, so it's not necessary. I don't think it needs them really. I mean, I'm sure there'll still be flick ones on the left and right for certain things, But yeah, I don't think for the gesture, it's like navigation itself. I don't think it's a necessary thing.
So it's actually, it's a lot of questions being. Do you think UWP would be further along if Microsoft bought Adobe?
No, no.
I don't see how that's connected at all. Adobe, first of all, I would never want Microsoft to buy Adobe. I just don't see who that would benefit. Adobe's clear. They want to have, they're like Steam. They want their own locked-in system and monthly subscription. That's the big holdup right now. I'm not sure we can do monthly subscription through UWP. I think you could. I think that was a thing with the store, but it's not. But Microsoft would take a cut from it versus like why Adobe's like, why would we give anything up to Microsoft's store when we could just do it ourselves? We have such lock-in anyway. And I think that actually makes sense. Adobe with UWP, like they could do it, but their tools and their dev windows are different than Microsoft's. Even like getting Adobe Photoshop to run natively on ARM, that can happen. But because of the way their teams work and their schedule, don't forget, when you work at Adobe, you say you're on the Photoshop team, like you have a huge list of things you need to do. You have plans, we got to do the new 2020 version. And a lot of that stuff is going to be based on a priority. So as much as I would love to have, like, say, Photoshop native ARM compiled, that's a big task. And so Adobe's got to be like, well, okay, so what are the numbers on Windows 10 and ARM right now? Like it's like 0.5%. It's like, well, put it up on the top priority. Let's obviously they're not going to do that. So when I talk to Adobe or Qualcomm about Adobe, they're talking to them. They're going back and forth, but Adobe's on their own schedule for a thing. So it'll happen eventually, but it's all about market share money long term,
Oh, hang on. Just scrolled up. Wasn't there a new Windows search GUI hidden in the latest Insider build? Something in the center of the screen, nicer design, etc. Got some insight on that. So yeah, I did ask around about that UI. I don't know if people are lying to me about it, but from what I heard was that basically it was just an experiment that some people at Microsoft were doing, and that there's no plan to ship it. Like I said, that could be total lie. It might have something to do with Windows Lite, for all I know. I don't know for sure. But to be honest, the aesthetic for it was very Windows Lite-y from the Windows Lite stuff me and Dan has seen. It would look at home on Windows Lite. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what comes of that.
Someone's asking me about how's the Tesla mileage so far?
How is the mileage?
Yeah, actually, I can look in the app right now. I have 1,868 miles on the car so far, which I've had it now since the end of March. So I don't drive a ton, obviously. Mm-hmm. Love the car. I've had zero issues with it. I was able to download Beach Buggy 2 for the Tesla so I could play video games in the car, which is so funny. But the reason why they have that is if you need to go to a charging station, it could take you like 20 minutes or stuff like that. So you can actually just sit in your car and play video games now. It's just it's free, right? So Tesla just gives you free video games, including Atari games in your car. Whether you use it or not is, I don't know. But I think it's just a great little Easter egg thing that they do. But I still recommend a Model 3 if you can afford one. I've had no issues with it, and it brings me nothing but joy to drive in it. And I'm not even into cars. But it's if you're listening to this podcast, you probably would really, really like having a Tesla. It's just, it's like a smartphone of cars. I feel like, and I hate to do the whole, like, it's the iPhone of cars, but it really is the iPhone of cars. So yeah, go check it out.
Someone's asking, do you think 19H2's main new feature will be swapping Edge to Chrome Edge? It would make sense since it's essential to Windows Core OS. No, I don't think New Edge will be ready in time for 19H2.
20H1.
I think if anything, that'll be a 20H1 change or 20H2. It'll be next year, put it that way.
Yeah.
Edge will be done this year, but by the time it's done, I don't know if there'll be enough time between it being done and them having a build that they want to bundle with the operating system. Yeah. Because to integrate new Edge and get rid of old Edge, that's a whole thing, right? That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it'll be next year for bundling with Windows, but I think they will ship a public version this year for those who want to run it on Windows 10 this year, or load it onto older versions of Windows, etc., etc.
And we do expect that browser to be in the store too, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you sure
I've heard.
Gonna use...
Yeah, there was some conversation this week on Twitter about it too, and I think it was confirmed at build that's going to go into the store.
Okay, interesting. Because when we first asked Microsoft that, they were very against it. Well, against is a strong word. They were they didn't want to say that basically what that they were alluding to was that it wasn't going in the store. That it would just be updated independently.
Because I think I think it's going to be confusing because we don't have an official public version, like the shipping version.
Right.
That doesn't exist. So I could see the shipping version being in the store, which gets updated every couple months, every couple weeks, whenever they need to. I think there will always be dev versions, Canary and the dev, which will then be outside the store and will always have the updater built in.
I can see that they have definitely tested updating it via the store, so it is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible, but when I asked them, they were very much against the store. So.
Yeah, because it could go either way. Like Teams, right? Teams still is not even in the store and updates independently of the store too. But that supposedly is going to change too. I think the Teams thing was more about they just wanted Teams out as fast as they could and wanted to scale as quickly as they could. In fact, was going through Electron and not through the store was the best way to do it. And it actually worked for them. So, but I think eventually we'll see Teams get redone and go into the store.
That would be nice. On the subject of 19H2, actually, I do wonder if this new Cortana stuff will be 19H2 because it is an app, so technically it's not part of the operating system, and the split between Cortana and Surge is already done in 19H1. Yeah. And I'm assuming it's not too much work to actually just force the app into the pane where Cortana is anyway.
Yeah, you're getting to that. Yeah, you're talking about the whole plumbing thing right now. Right, so right now, if you install this Cortana app on was it 1903, you get the whole thanks for your interest.
Yeah, it runs as an app window, which isn't what it will be like when it's ready.
And as Zach was pointing out, the plumbing isn't there, right? The way it hooks into the operating system isn't in 1903. It is in 19H2 and 20H1. Yes,
we definitely know it's in 20H1. That's what I'm wondering if it's in 19H2 as well. It could be, for all we know, but it might not. So that should be quite interesting.
But it makes sense that you would see some of that progress in 19H2, even if it's just shipping in 20H1.
Is Collections coming in the next Windows 10 release or when Edge Chromium is released? Collections being the Edge-specific feature, that's coming whenever Microsoft is ready to start previewing it, and they didn't give an ETA for that. It's not tied to a Windows release or anything specific.
Someone's asked me to start a Tesla YouTube channel. I may, so we're going to be having I'll be doing more video, or I'll have to start doing more video of my own soon. I'll just say that. But that's going to take me a while to get there because I don't know how. But if I get proficient and do my own videos and editing, I may do a side Tesla thing. It wouldn't be on Windows Central, obviously, but maybe it's a side project. It would be kind of fun.
Do you guys know that the Twit people call the new Edge Credge? I have heard this term.
That's Mary Jo Foley.
Yeah,
she started
I'm
that.
not a fan of that.
No, it's Edgium.
I wonder if Microsoft will call that name if it rolls out to the public. They will absolutely not be calling it Credge.
They don't even like Edgium. They just like it.
It's Microsoft Edge. Yeah, they call it Microsoft Edge.
If you want to get specific, it's Microsoft Edge built on Chromium or whatever. But I like Edgium. I mean, I don't think...
I like Edgium. Edgium sounds better.
It does. I mean, but Zach and I both agree on this. That should not be the public name. That should be the Windows Central, we're just joking around name.
I mean, if it were up to me, I would have rebranded it entirely. It wouldn't be Edge anymore. But, well, I'm not in charge, so... Right, any more questions? Otherwise, we are going to head off because it's Friday and I'm quite hungry. I haven't eaten yet.
Same.
Isn't it funny to have Cortana back in beta? Is it 2014 again? It is kind of funny. I did see that. I thought, that is pretty funny. Funny enough, the store listing says it runs on Windows Mobile, but it doesn't because it targets a build that's higher than the RS2 build that mobile's stuck on. So that's quite funny.
Hilarious.
Could you imagine running the new Cortana on Windows Phone? That's great. That would be great. So I wonder how long after Windows Mobile is dead that Microsoft removes the...
They bring it back.
That Microsoft removes the mobile
app targeting
support. Yeah, from in the store because you can still categorize by whether it supports mobile and stuff. I'm assuming they will have to get rid of that at some point.
It'll be December 31st. 11:59 p.m. in the middle of the holidays. Just it's gone. It's gone. There you go.
As if it never existed.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? If I'm December 31st and I go to the store and I notice it's gone, but I'm in the store on my foldable Surface device, I'll give no craps. Don't care. Sorry, I'm way over it at that point. But if I'm on, yeah.
Someone's Sean Michael from Windows Central is asking, how was the Microsoft Store? So the Microsoft Store isn't actually open yet. What we went to was like an advertisement for the store. They're giving away little things there. And I won like a £5 gift card, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they're sort of giving out little boxes to people, and basically the idea is if you win, say, 10% off, or you win a bigger prize, they will say, come into the Microsoft Store on July 11 and you can redeem your prize there. That's basically what they're doing. It's a cool idea, I think.
Yeah, they're putting a lot of
I'm
store.
glad they are as well, because it is, it should be the flagship for most of the world now at this point. Like all of Europe,
yeah, and the New York store. Yeah,
and the New York store. They're the two big ones, New York and London, and I guess one in Sydney. Can Edge be uninstalled, or is it part of the OS? So the current Edge is part of the OS, and I'm pretty sure the new Edge will be baked into the OS so that you can't really remove it as well. Maybe you can if you go into and like delete files and whatnot, but I don't think there'll be a way to right-click uninstall Edge. Xbox should make a mobile division for the Centaurus device. Yeah, would be fun. Rounded corners on apps, yay or nay? I'm okay with it. If the corner's not huge, then sure, I don't mind.
Rounded corners on buildings, yay or nay?
Nay, nay on that one.
Isn't that why they're tearing down the campus at Redmond right now? They're redoing all the buildings with rounded corners.
Yeah, that's exactly. You crack the code. That's what it is. That's an exclusive scoop right there.
Is it? It's just like Nadella. He just has this thing. Like his desk
round.
in his office is all rounded corners.
Yeah, that's what his legacy is. He just loves round things.
He just twitches. He's like, everything's gonna have rounded corners, and he's like, I ordered. I'm the CEO. Make it happen.
The next Xbox is round.
People
it's called the X circle.
Yeah, like you can't like go up to him with like sharp corners. He hates that.
He hates sharp corners. He wants them at least at a 5-degree radius. Any thoughts on Microsoft asking their employees to use Microsoft products over competitors? Oh yeah, what a stupid thing. We should have talked about that on the podcast.
What was it?
That thing came out with how Microsoft bans the use of Slack and other stuff.
That was dumb.
Yeah,
that was dumb. That was the story was. It's not that they banned Slack for being Slack. They banned Slack and only at the free levels, non-enterprise levels for security concerns, which we've had that conversation internally. Like Zach and I are talking about, like, hey, should we be talking about some of this, internal Microsoft stuff on Microsoft products? Like maybe they could listen in. We don't know, But any IT department worth their salt evaluates software and goes, this one is secure, this one's not secure, this one we're not sure about, and this is what we recommend departments use for communication. But this got spun by The Verge, and it wasn't really Tom Warren's fault, apparently. It's more about the headline, which, as writers, Zach and I know, we often don't always choose our own headlines.
Yeah.
But they spun it as sort of like Microsoft's banning competing products because they're jerks. That's how they used to be, and that's how they're back again. And that's not it at all. The company was basically saying, we know Teams is secure because we built it. And if we're going to have conversations internally about the company about IP, we prefer you being on secure things. Whereas Slack doesn't have the security, at least on the free levels and some of the non-enterprise levels, doesn't have that. But if their teams are using Slack and enterprise level and are paying for it, they said it's okay. That's all that was. That wasn't news. The only news was someone tweeted. I saw the story. It was funny. I saw it unfold on Twitter. You can't access the guidelines. You have to be a Microsoft employee. But someone was like openly kind of talking about it. But yeah, that was non-news.
Is Zach a system administrator? Of my own computer, yeah, sure.
What is this, Tron?
Yeah. I mean, I don't manage a business IT system, if that's what you're asking. I work for Windows Central.
Are you on the grid, Zach?
No, I live off the grid.
Is this end of line?
End of line. I'm now offline.
Someone's saying ketchup on eggs is scrumptious. Yes, Zach and I were joking around. One of my more popular tweets, despite the actual news I break, is putting ketchup on eggs. I'm a big fan of it. Turns out I have a poll running in my Twitter. Go check it out. It's almost 50-50 split. 50% of you hate ketchup on eggs, think it's wrong. The other 50% is right and thinks ketchup on eggs is great. For people who are saying salsa and or Tabasco, I agree with you. I'm not a ketchup purist, but I am a big believer in ketchup on eggs. So you go get de-rezzed.
Here's an interesting question. Is it up to Microsoft or PWA app developers to optimize touch support? For example, Amazon has no way to go back with touch or even mouse when in app windows. That's a good question. So at one point, Microsoft was all for doing it themselves. There was like a back button in the title bar and stuff. And then last build, they announced that they're getting rid of that and that app developers need to add their own back buttons. But now I think they're backtracking on that idea, and the reason they actually made that change is because of sets, and sets was coming, and that would have got in the way of the back button in the title bar because there would have been tabs there instead now. But now sets isn't coming. I think they can go back to that idea. And in this week in the Canary version of Edge, they actually added a back button to PWAs now. So when you're running them in the PWA form, there should be a back button in the title bar. Now this doesn't help if you're in tablet mode. If there is no back button in a PWA, then that is like within the actual website, then there is a problem. You'll have to like swipe down slightly just to get access to the title bar. Then you can press the back button, which I know is annoying. Although I think with Edge, you can there's gestures, so you can just swipe as if you're going back, and it should go back for you. But if you're using, say, a PWA from the store, it is quite annoying because you do have to swipe on the title bar to get access to that back button. Or actually, no, in tablet mode, there was a dedicated back button in this Windows shell by the start button. That's what you use to go back if there isn't a in like a back button in the actual app itself. So that's how you get around it. So Microsoft has options for it, and PWAs can also build their own if they want to. Do you think a Surface phone running Android would be successful knowing there is a bunch of Android OEM partners? Or would it be better to just support OEMs and leave mobile alone? It's a good question. Honestly, we don't know. I can't think of a reason why Microsoft would do it other than to have that recognition of having a Microsoft logo in someone's pocket that they could pull out and say, hey, I run the Surface phone. They could also make like a secure version of Android and advertise it as like the most secure version of Android. Comes with Microsoft Launcher and all the Microsoft apps, of course. And I guess there might be some play there for enterprises and whatnot. But I don't think it would I think it'd be like the Pixel line for Google. There's a lot of media hype around it and stuff, but nobody really buys them. You know, that's just what I think a Surface phone running Android would be. Which, to be fair, isn't a bad thing. As long as it has the app ecosystem and Microsoft sells enough of them where they don't actually lose money on making the device, then there's not a problem with that. I think that's cool. But yeah, I don't think it would be like an iPhone killer of sorts. I mean, there are rumors that higher ups at Microsoft are interested in making Android phones. So whether anything comes of that, I don't know, but that would be fun.
Let's pray they don't.
Yeah. Well, you don't want that?
I see it both ways, obviously. Listen, if Microsoft came out with an Android phone, 100% I'd buy it, and I'd be like, it's the greatest thing ever. I would still rather see them try something different.
With Windows.
I'm okay with this long game Centaurus. We can maybe do Andromeda, and then, it builds up from there. I'd rather see that happen. I think that's better.
Yeah, me too.
But
what about an Android phone that can run UWP apps? Sold.
Tempting. I love it. It's like, and Panos comes to your house and delivers it by hand.
Yeah.
He
blesses it before he hands it over.
It's like that's what they do in Japan for Nikon lenses.
Yeah.
There's some of them that there's this one lens that they actually bless.
This is a question for you, Dan. Bigger loss: Microsoft banned or Xbox Connect?
Bans. I like Connect. I mean, first of all, Connect technology lives on.
Yeah,
they're just talking about today. Version 4 of Connect is about to roll out, but it's Azure. Band for me, because Band is just it's like a smartphone. You just always wear it. It's always there with you. It's something I saw 9,000 times a day. Connect, let's see, when I turned on the TV, and even then, all I used it for was it logged me in, and I could tell the TV to pause my TV show. But man, I do miss Band tremendous, because that's why I said earlier with I still want to see what the Surface team's take on a wearable would be, because I think it would be pretty awesome. But I miss band tremendously. There's still, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I would kill to have a band.
Yeah. Business question. Most websites make money through ads. Do you think Google is doing right by deprecating APIs to block ads? Yeah, this is an interesting subject because I mean, I don't know if it's the same for anyone else, but for our website, we don't really make money on ads anymore. We make some money, but it's not like you can't pay a full team an annual salary on it anymore because
Especially with everybody using ad block.
that's what I'm saying. Everybody uses
Yeah.
ad block. So there are other methods that websites make money these days. I'm not too sure. I haven't really been following the whole Google blocking ad blockers and stuff. I'm assuming it's just to control Google ads, right? And allow Google to have their ads show up and not have them affected by ad blockers. I don't know, honestly. I'm really not following that too much. But I think most websites these days are aware that you can't live off ads only. And there are sort of sponsors and you know, there's different methods for websites to make money these days outside of ads only, like such as premium subscriptions. You probably see this quite a bit now on the web. You'll try to read an article and it says, sorry, to read the rest of this article, you have to sign up for our premium tier. And that's because everybody uses ad block. And that's everyone's fault. That's our fault. That's Dan's fault. That's everyone watching this. Everyone uses an ad block these days. You know, it's not just people who don't write for websites. Even we use ad block because it's safer, right? You less chance of running into malware and stuff. So yeah, it's the human race's fault that we now have to put some things behind paywalls. Not that we're planning to do this. Windows Central is still open and free, and hopefully always will be. But yeah.
How does Windows Central make money? Human trafficking.
Yeah.
It's a dirty secret, but pays really well.
Yeah.
No, we make it through affiliate linking. You know, when we talk about a product and you click that link to go check it out their store, if you buy that product, we get a little piece of that. To me, that was always like, I don't find that unethical because if I'm going to tell you like HP's new laptop is good and I really like HP's new laptop, and I'm like, you should go maybe buy it. If this meets your standards and requirements for a laptop and what you are looking for, go buy it. Why should we not get a piece of that? We just helped HP sell them sell a laptop, right? So I view that as just like it's a commission, just like how the guy you go buy a car from, unless it's a Tesla, gets a commission. So and of course, my reputation's on the line too. If I go like, this is an amazing laptop, and you go and buy it, and like it's crap, you're probably going to not take my future recommendations very seriously. And then word may get out that I recommend crap, and I don't. In fact, this was actually kind of a funny thing with our YouTube channel. Someone asked me recently, like, why don't you review more budget devices or gaming laptops? And I'll be honest, the YouTube channel, the reviews, the criteria is because I liked that laptop. Because a lot of times companies will be like,
and he's not even joking. The ones we get with video views are the ones Dan just likes.
Yeah. And if I don't like it, like I tend not to review it. Sometimes I'll review it if it's like
if it's a high class device that he doesn't like, then he'll review it.
Yeah. But like a lot of times companies will be like, do you want this? I'm like, yeah, I'm never interested in that device. Yeah. But like I just got the HP Envy 13 in, and I haven't reviewed Envies in a while, if ever. But I saw this one, and I was like, ooh. And then I got it. I'm like, ooh, this is actually really nice, especially for the price point. So it's easy for me to do a video on it because there's something there I can talk about. But that's how I do my reviews. It's a selection bias. But I'll talk about stuff I don't like either. You know, sometimes if something's so bad, but I feel like that's always it's like I can get a laptop. It's like just terrible, right? And I can't see anyone buying it. Like I could go write a 2,000 word review on that, shoot a video on it. But then I'm like, I'd rather do something that is awesome that you should go buy instead of telling you something you shouldn't buy, you know? So it's the use of my time, I guess.
Someone's asking, why is the Windows Central app not using things like Fluent Design and acrylic and all that stuff? And the simple answer is that we can't acquire a budget to get a developer to build it, basically. Working at a big company like Mobile Nations is sometimes, it has its benefits and sometimes has its curses. And in this case, there's no real selling point for us to put money into an app developer to actually build out the app. I'm not an app developer.
Yeah. That said, I do want to talk to the people who did that UWP launch recently, and they have their UWP Discord, all that. I'd love to get one of those guys who did, some of those newer apps like Legere and MyTube and the Spotify app, Spotify.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having those guys, help out and do UWP app. We can make it a community thing. If those guys are listening, ping me. Otherwise, I'll have to track you down on Discord and start that conversation. There's opportunities for us.
We want to have a really cool Windows Central app that does use all of the latest design languages and stuff, but it's difficult. It really is difficult for us to get that greenlit internally to go live, because Windows Central app is ad-free, which is obviously a problem for those in our monetary team who's like, why would we even give them a way to visit our website for free? And it's like, well, everyone uses AdBlock anyway, so what's the problem? But yeah, it's like there's lots of different things at play. Me and Dan definitely want it to happen, but there's a lot of things that we have to jump over first to get it to a place where it can be done. Yeah,
back in the day where the site was smaller and the pressure was a lot less, like I would handle everything.
Yeah.
Now, like, as the site has gotten bigger and we've diversified, I have I'm still doing 9 different jobs, and having app development to do it on my own. It's another, I don't mean actually writing the app, I mean managing the app it's just another thing. And I'm like being tasked now with trying to do my own videos, and it's like, oh, you don't know video editing? Go learn it. It's like, come on. All right.
Someone's mentioning Forbes meant it's 2 9-inch 4x3 screens, so it would open out to a 3x2 screen, which would make more sense. I don't know. I don't think, did they clarify that? I don't remember if they did.
I don't know.
It could be, honestly. Like, I'm not gonna firmly say no, it's not that. It absolutely could be that. I don't know. All right.
I think we're done.
Yeah, I think we are done. Someone's asking about Windows Lite gestures. I already answered that about 10 minutes ago. Not too many gestures on Windows Lite, I don't believe. Maybe there is. Honestly, I don't know. But since it's a bigger screen, a bigger real estate, there's actually more room for buttons and on-screen elements, so gestures are less required. On Andromeda, it was a big thing. Windows Lite, less so. Although I'm sure there'll still be some. I don't know the specifics on it, though. But that is it for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back. Oh, we'll be back next week. It's Independence Day next week, isn't it?
It's July 5th.
Will you be around for that, or are you taking that day off?
Oh, sorry, the 4th. What am I looking at? That's June. Yeah, the 5th is going to be.
I mean, are you going to be around?
No, I'll be around.
You'll be around. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll be back next time, next Friday then. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated. Goodbye.